2 months into shifting to keto, I not only got rid of all of the medication, but I was, for the first time since sixth grade, completely free of all seizures. And that was, 10 years ago now, and I haven't had a single instance of an aura since then without any medication whatsoever.
If you've been thinking about starting a ketogenic diet, I encourage you to just do it. Yes, you are the reason why I started this podcast in the first place. More than anything else, I love to empower people to take responsibility for their own health. And for so many people, a ketogenic diet is the most effective way to reverse metabolic dysfunction, which is the very foundation of all chronic illness. But to do this effectively, you need 3 specific tools or you're going to struggle and you won't see results. I do not want this to happen to you. So I give you these 3 tools in my free ebook, How to Start a Keto Diet. And you can go download your free copy right now at radicalhealthmakeover.com. I am excited to introduce you today to Nate Klipfel. Nate is a natural bodybuilder, a USPA drug-tested Nevada State record powerlifter, personal trainer, a nutritionist, yoga instructor, skateboarder, and lover of nature. Using diet alone, Nate has been able to reverse a debilitating seizure disorder, also his depression and anxiety and mood disorders and feelings of low self-worth, low self-confidence, and also addiction. And Nate has been able to overcome a lifelong addiction with sugar, sweets, and other foods, including caffeine. He's cured his lifelong insomnia and daily lethargy, mental fog, and chronic pain in his feet, knees, hips, low back, elbows, shoulders, and neck, among many other things that Nate is going to share with us today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Nate. If you would, could you just start out by telling us a little bit about your seizure disorder?
So for me, my seizure disorder manifested in auras, often referred to as micro seizures, and they started in about sixth grade is the first time I remember having one. I still think that it was probably due to, I was a skateboarder, so I had lots of head traumas. And so I think that it was because I don't recall having any before I had this one incident where I smacked my face on a handrail and I had amnesia from it. No concussion or anything, but after that was when I first recall the beginnings of my auras. And they weren't anything I was aware of at first, and that's why it wasn't until high school that they started becoming more prevalent. But all throughout middle school, they would just kind of occur, I don't know, a few times a year randomly, and they weren't particularly debilitating at first. I would just kind of get a little disoriented. I would feel slightly euphoric, and I would have these flashes, vivid mental imagery, flashes of past dreams that I had had. Nothing traumatizing, just random. Could have been the dream from the night before or a dream from 5 years before. It was just kind of random neuronal firings is what I assume. But they didn't start to become debilitating until high school and then college. And in college, they started occurring more frequently. And then we still didn't get anything checked out until one day, my sophomore year of college, I believe, I woke up having one. And at this point, they were starting to make me nauseous as well. So they made me feel like I was going to faint. And I would get very, very nauseous and have trouble communicating or understanding things, almost like a stroke, where if I tried to speak, I would say nonsense words. And I got up and went to the bathroom because I thought I was going to vomit, and I apparently passed out. And I think, the only reason I didn't die was because there was a loud bang, which I assume was me hitting my head on the counter. And then my girlfriend at the time rushed in because she heard that loud bang and saw me seizing on the floor. And so they had to rushed me to the hospital and all of that. And so that was when they started looking into, okay, well, what's going on here? I went to 3 or 4 different neurologists. Every single one of them, they never really pinned down a real diagnosis. They gave me the diagnosis of undiagnosed seizure disorder. Was the only thing they could seem to settle on, and because that was the only real grand mal that I had. But the auras were becoming more and more frequent. They were starting to affect my memory. They were starting to affect my work in college. Like I started having a lot of trouble. I still did very well in school, but I started having trouble parsing things out. And I started to very much feel like an Alzheimer's patient. Like my short-term memory was shot. And so first I was put on Depakote, and then Keppra, and then Lamictal, and they even had me on Seroquel at one point, which is an antipsychotic. And all of those just horrible experiences, completely destroyed my mental state, my mental health, apathy, depression, just all kinds of awful things all throughout while I was still trying to graduate college, mind you. And so at a certain point, the Lamictal was the only one that didn't make me feel totally miserable. And the ironic thing is none of them actually controlled the seizure auras whatsoever. They all just made it so that they didn't feel like they would progress to a full seizure again. But I would still get the auras. They were still just as common. They weren't controlling them in any way. And they were just slightly less debilitating. The Lamictal was the only one that kind of helped a little bit, but I was still getting them. And at a certain point, I started looking into, okay, well, if I need to be on this stuff the rest of my life, what does that look like? And so I looked up reviews of people who had been taking Lamictal their whole lives, and every single one of the reviews was, I wish I hadn't done this. I am only in my 20s or 30s, and I can barely remember anything. I don't have any feelings anymore. My emotions are completely shot. Like I feel like I'm dead in the water. And that was terrifying to me because I did not want that to happen since I had already had emotional issues growing up. And so that's when I said, okay, I need to figure something else out. And so I went to a doctor who was actually not a neurologist at all. He was just an MD. And he's also an anti-aging doctor. And I was really lucky. He was a guy out in LA. And he had already had some experience. This was back in 2012, I believe it was. And he had already had some experience with keto. And so he had been recommending that to patients before, kind of offhandedly, because that was back when it was still very much of a faux pas, and he probably could have lost his license if people had reported him for it. But so I went to him, and he said, well, hey, I mean, why has no one ever looked at your diet? There's a study from 1918 that showed something like 80% of seizures were managed much better by a strict ketogenic diet. So he gave me a printout, and he was like, okay, these are the foods that you should be eating for that. And this is what everything should look like. And 2 months into shifting to keto, I not only got rid of all of the medication, but I was, for the first time since 6th grade, completely free of all seizures. And that was, 10 years ago now, and I haven't had a single instance of an aura since then without any medication whatsoever.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Not a single episode, not one.
Not even one. Yeah.
That is incredible. Wow.
Yeah. And I haven't taken, the last time I took medication was in 2012, right before I started on that diet.
Wow. On the keto diet. Well, good for your doctor for mentioning that to you.
Yeah. He quite literally saved me. So I was very lucky that I found him.
Yeah. So this may have all started with just a brain injury of some sort that caused some inflammation, and it just progressed.
That's my theory. That, I mean, nobody ever really pinpointed it. I explained that to some of the doctors, but a lot of the neurologists that I went to seemed to think that it was more of a, you know, they always like to point to genetics and think that it wasn't environmentally caused. But who knows?
Yeah. Right. Wow. So you're off of your medications and you're feeling great. You're working out, you're a personal trainer, you're doing all sorts of amazing things in the health realm. And tell us more about sort of what other things you're noticing, and maybe you could get into also your specifics on your keto diet in terms of your macros. That would be really interesting to know.
Sure. So just to, I don't know if I had explained this. I've switched to carnivore now. So kind of more lion diet actually, in the last year or so. But originally my, keto it started out, I was trying to follow his guidelines, which were much closer to the actual like clinical keto, where it's like 80 to 90% fat and, 10 fat, 10 to 15% protein and then 5% carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to stay strictly under about 20 or 30 grams of carbohydrate per day. However, at the time I was also already into starting to train, and I was into bodybuilding at the time. And so I kind of gave my own leeway with that. And I went pretty high on the protein because I wanted to get at least, my body weight's worth of protein in grams. So I was between like 150 and 200 grams of protein. And then I just filled everything else in with fat until I was full pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was what I did for a good number of years. Now during this time, because of the bodybuilding and because I was unfortunately malinformed by the fitness world and the bodybuilding sphere, I was still having cheat meals every so often. So at first it was, once a week I would have a carb binge for just a meal, and then I went through phases where it would be once every 4 weeks. Sometimes it was once. Sometimes it was even twice a week, depending on what kind of training split I was on. But the one thing that I noticed over years and years of doing that was every single time I did it, I felt miserable. I was very lucky that my auras didn't seem to return as a result of that, although I can pretty much guarantee that if I would have kept along that path, they probably would have returned. I just got really lucky. But I would always feel really bad. I would always gain a whole bunch of weight right after doing it.
And just for doing it for one day.
Yeah. Usually it wasn't even one full day. It was usually just a single meal. But to be fair, it was like one of those ridiculous, The Rock kind of cheat meals where I would have, an entire box of donuts and a whole thing of ice cream and Reese's peanut butter cups, and it would be a whole event that I would make of it. But that was, again, a huge part of my food addiction and my sugar addiction that I had grown up with my entire life. And because I was never overweight as a result of that, I never really saw a big deal with it. And I just thought, oh, well, bodybuilding, I got to top off my glycogen stores if I want to hit the workouts real hard. But I would always notice that I would feel weaker and I would feel worse for the next 3 or 4 days after just having that one really bingy meal. The biggest thing for me that finally brought about my actual change and maybe stop doing cheat meals altogether was that I noticed my moods were not stabilizing. That was the thing that gave me the most issue. I'd had mood disorder and not diagnosed, but I'd had mood issues for a lot of my life, and I had a lot of trouble. When I noticed that every single time I did that, it would be a solid 3 days, sometimes as much as an entire week before I actually felt like I was back to myself and not constantly agitated by every single thing that came across me. And as I started to become a trainer, I was like, well, that's not acceptable. I can't be throwing this on my clients, because that's the opposite of what a trainer does. I'm here to motivate. I'm not here to be angry at everyone. Yeah. So that was the big thing that caused the change for me.
So you were having weight gain. This is as a result of one cheat meal with lots of carbs, maybe some processed food too.
Lots of it, yeah.
And then, I mean, I've noticed too, if I have a cheat day, my whole body hurts the next day. Like my recovery from working out as I normally do is completely thrown off if I have excess amount of carbs. So I definitely noticed the same thing. I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm doing my best to build some muscle, but we'll get into that next maybe. But yeah, I mean, I notice it a lot in just how my body recovers, and it's profound, like night and day, how much better I feel not doing carbs. So that's excellent. So you were noticing it in your moods as well. You were more agitated, feeling triggered and frustration and just normal mood things that normally wouldn't be there after you would have those carbs. So that's really interesting. And probably brain fog and fatigue as well would follow that.
Lots of chronic pain in my joints, my knees, my hips, my back, shoulders, neck, everything. Yeah, that would always crop back up.
You had a lifelong struggle with a lot of body pain, joint pain, knees, ankles, back, neck. Can you tell us more about that?
So I was a skateboarder for about 16 years. And I'm pretty sure that's where most of it came from, because I didn't just ride around. I jumped off of buildings and, was grinding down handrails and slamming my body into concrete for years and years and years. And I just think it was so many years of built up impact stress from that by the time I was in my early 20s, mind you, and this was somebody who, by all other definitions, I was very healthy. I had a lot of muscle mass. I looked fit and lean, but my feet hurt basically 100% of the time. My knees would get incredibly, excruciatingly sore if I was working for more than 6 hours on my feet without sitting down. And at the time, I was working a job where I was there for about 16 to 19 hours a day on concrete, so not able to sit down the whole day because I had clients back to back every hour. And so by the end of the day, it was pretty excruciating pain where I would have to like put my leg up on something just to get some relief. And that was just the knees. I also had tightness and pain in my hips, and I had multiple slip discs in my lower and mid back. I was later diagnosed with severe foraminal stenosis in my back, and then I'd had shoulder pains and issues, and neck pains and issues that would often crop up if I turned too sharply or did something. Then I'd get a crink in my neck and I wouldn't be able to turn my head. So that was something I dealt with starting in my late teens, probably, like 18, 19. And then it carried all the way through into my 20s, my late 20s, actually, because it wasn't that actually really didn't start fully going away until the last few years, the last maybe 3 or 4 years.
So you had a lot of inflammation, obviously, in your body and brain for a long time in your life. And so, did you ever take pain meds?
No, I never took pain medication. I trust it, and I also just didn't feel like I wasn't in pain to where I couldn't walk. And so if I wasn't bedridden and like hospitalized, then it wasn't enough pain to be worth taking medication for. So that was kind of my thought.
I mean, oftentimes if you go to the doctor and say you're in pain, the go-to treatment would be either pain meds or surgery or both.
I was recommended surgery for my back. I was for my left wrist, actually, which I was told was permanently damaged, and I would have pain for the rest of my life if I didn't get surgery. Lo and behold, 3 months of kind of designing a little bit of physical therapy with myself and my trainer at the time, and the pain was gone. At one point, it was bad enough where I couldn't hold myself up in a push-up because there was so much pain in that wrist. From that was directly from a skateboarding injury where I fell with all of my weight onto the wrist. Didn't break it, but I damaged a ligament in it. And the doctor said, only solution is surgery. And no, I just worked out, and buddy helped me design a physical therapy program for it. And now I can bench press as much as I want without pain. No problems. So
that's awesome. And tell me about your back. So how do you deal with the slip discs? What's the remedy for that nobody really talks about? So
that was a very aggressive. So when that initially happened, I was already working the 12, 14, 16-hour days, and I was making about $1,000 a month, and so I couldn't really afford to miss a single day of work. So what I did for that was my buddy helped me design a physical therapy program where I did 3 times a day. I did 5x5s, which is the 5 major lifts are squat, bench press, overhead press, Pendlay row, and a deadlift. And I was doing 5 sets of 5 reps each of all those exercises back to back with just 30-second rests in between. I did that morning, afternoon, and evening. So I did it 3 times a day, starting with just a barbell, so just 45 pounds. And then every day I would add 2.5 pounds to the bar. And then on top of that, each time I finished that routine, I would break. So I was walking about 15 miles a day and doing these three workouts a day. And I was in excruciating pain for the first week of that. It was really hard. The movements themselves actually weren't too bad because I was very focused on bracing and trying to protect my spine. But the walking was just miserable for the first week. So it required a lot of dealing with pain there. But after the first week, I started to have days where I wasn't having any pain, and I was starting to feel a lot better. And within about the first month, I was pain-free in a single month after slip disc, which is kind of unheard of. And then after about, I want to say it was 2 months, I was pretty much feeling it was either 2 or 3 months. I was pretty much feeling back to normal. I was able to start doing all of I didn't have to keep doing that program anymore. And I was able to go back to my regular workouts. I was just careful for a good 6 months after that because I was very nervous about it happening again. And I did notice that if I jerked, in a certain way, I would feel a little something just kind of warning me. So fortunately, that was never anything that got any worse than that. But yeah, after just continuing that, just a couple months of that physical therapy program, and then going right back into my regular workouts, it made a huge. The biggest difference, though, because I did still, even after that process, I did still have some pain every once in a while there. The biggest thing for me, and anyone who back pain, I highly recommend this, is something called the McGill Big 3 movements. This is what I finally started incorporating. I heard about them from Dr. Aaron Horschig, who's a Squat University on Instagram. He wrote a book called Rebuilding Milo. Brilliant. Should be taught to every single person.
What's the name of the book?
Therapy. Oh, sorry. Rebuilding Milo.
Milo.
Rebuilding Milo. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Milo.
Great.
Yeah. Phenomenal textbook. It should be the standard of care for all physical therapy, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I read that, and he talked about these movements developed by a guy named Dr. Stuart McGill, who is a back specialist. And they're just three kind of ab exercises. One of them is called a curl up. It's kind of like an easier version of a sit up.
Mm-hmm.
Another one's a bird dog, where you're just extending one leg and the other arm. And then the other one's a side plank. And you just do those three movements. You hold 10 seconds each, but you're very focused on expanding into the abdomen and engaging the transverse abdominis, and holding that bracing there. And he recommended doing these every single day. And so when I started actually doing that, that was the first time that I was able to do anything I wanted, even jerking, twisting motions, and not experience any pain whatsoever. Like I'm now, I just started doing some Muay Thai and MMA, which is a lot of very jerking and potentially bodily damaging stuff. And I feel fantastic because it's been a year and a half or almost 2 years now, I think, that I've been doing those McGill movements every single day.
Wow. That's excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. I think that's really useful information. So you have overcome your neurological issues 100%. You're off of all of your medications. Your body's not in pain every day. Your moods have regulated. Your seizures are gone. I mean, this is a miracle, what you've experienced. Yeah. It's incredible.
Well, and to be honest, those things are kind of just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of different things that I dealt with over the years that all got rid. I mean, I had something called keratosis pilaris on my skin. It's just like strawberry skin, little bumps all over my arms. They used to be on my face and my neck and my chest, and I was very insecure about them. Those disappeared. I used to have dandruff basically my entire life, and I tried all different kinds of medicated hair shampoos and all those sorts of things. I do not have to wash my hair anymore. I literally just rinse it with water. I don't even use shampoo or conditioner, and it's smooth and the healthiest that it's ever been. And my dandruff is completely gone. And same with my skin. I actually just wash, as crazy as it sounds. I know I just wash myself with water on my skin. No. I don't even use soaps anymore.
It's not crazy. It's the best way. Yep.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I stopped doing that because I started looking into all the things that were in conventional soaps and shampoos and conditioners. And I was like, I would never eat any of these things or put them in my body. So why am I going to put them on my skin, which is the barrier to a lot of my other health?
Absolutely.
The microbiome on the skin, which is very important.
Absolutely. So, very good point.
So that has been really huge for me. Changing though to a carnivore and lion diet, that I think was the biggest shift in my mental state. Because keto helped me tremendously, don't get me wrong. But when I was still having veggies and a few, low carb plant foods here and there, I didn't notice any major issues, but I would notice that, I would feel bloated. I would sometimes have a little trouble regulating my weight. I would still have bouts of indigestion or just gastrointestinal distress. I was very commonly going to the bathroom a lot, which was really frustrating because I worked such long days and I didn't really have time to stop and go to the bathroom every 2 hours. And that's not normal, right? This is not a normal gastrointestinal function to have to go to the bathroom every 2 hours. So anybody who's listening, if you think that that's normal, that is not normal. So keep going. So the vegetables were definitely inflaming your gut, which is the epicenter of all systemic inflammation, which is what increases pain and neurological issues and inflammation of the brain, essentially. So you were experiencing a little bit of that. And it started in your gut, even though maybe you didn't notice it in your brain chemistry as well. You were improving in that area, which you can have huge improvements just with keto. But there's also the addition, oftentimes with the keto diet, of vegetables that are low carb. So what you're saying is that when you cut out all the vegetables, that's when you notice the biggest difference. So keep going. Yes, vegetables and fruits, even though I don't, I think a lot of people can do perfectly well with fruits, and I even think vegetables to some degree can be okay for a lot of people. But for me, after cutting those things out, I reversed a non-alcoholic fatty liver, which I had, and I didn't have the full-blown disease, NAFLD, but my liver enzymes were elevated consistently until I eliminated all fructose and the veggies. And then it was almost like the same thing I experienced when I first went keto. When I first went carnivore, it was like this metamorphosis. It's like the veil is lifted from your eyes. Like there's been this cloud that has been hiding everything your whole life, and suddenly the cloud is lifted and the sun is shining, and it's like, oh, I'm not sick. I'm not diseased. The world isn't a horrible place. It's a beautiful place with wonderful people and wonderful things.
Quick break from the programming today, because nothing lights me up more than empowering people to make informed decisions about their health based on hard scientific facts. The ketogenic diet has stood the test of time, and the scientific literature shows us that this can be a powerful healing strategy. Don't let another day slip by when you could be doing something proactively to change your health. If you're still wondering how to begin your keto diet, it's time to stop thinking and start doing today. Just do it. Go to radicalhealthmakeover.com and download your free copy of my ebook, How to Start a Keto Diet. Now, back to the program.
It gave me that same kind of clarity where my ability to think improved, my ability to reason and to respond to stressors was the biggest thing, because I always had trouble really dealing with even with keto. And again, that helped a lot, but I still had trouble dealing with stressors, especially if they piled up. I would feel anxiety building up and welling up within me. And it would cause me to do things that it would cause me to do or say things that I regretted. I would yell or get agitated or shut down or whatever it was, made relationships really difficult. So when I went carnivore, that completely changed, and I almost kind of hit this Zen state where I don't know if you've talked to or heard of Brett Lloyd, but he's been one of the biggest contributors on my carnivore journey here. He was the one who encouraged me to actually go, eliminate all plants completely.
I do know him, and I do know his story. I'm familiar.
Yeah. Brett's an incredible guy, and so he kind of got me started. He and Rivero Health, Dr. Sean Baker's website, everyone on there has been phenomenal. They helped me guide me that way, and I finally started experiencing what he called effortless daily happiness, where it's just your regular day is just so bright and beautiful that you can have a million different things that are stressors and that throw you off, but they just kind of roll off your back. You become much more resilient. It's amazing. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. The environment, it doesn't change necessarily, but it's how we respond to the environment that we're more capable of responding differently. And that's a beautiful thing. So that's really important that you brought that up. The ketogenic diet, just for the listeners, it encompasses such a wide variety of things. It encompasses the carnivore diet, the paleo diet, the paleo ketogenic diet, the carnivore diet, the Mediterranean diet. I mean, there could be, many different types of diets that can be ketogenic. So I just want to clarify that for people. Yeah. So the carnivore diet is a version of a ketogenic diet. And it obviously, in the context of what we're talking about, it would be, the definition of that would be a diet that does not include any plant material, only animal products. So that would be animal fats and animal protein. And I'm a huge fan and proponent of the carnivore diet. It actually helped me to reverse a lot of problems as well that I was having, mainly joint pain and also just a lot of mental fog and even intestinal distress as well. So that's a big contributor in my world to a happier, more content, less reactive way of living. And it just feels so good in my body, which is an experience that I had never had before. And there's just no discomfort. So there isn't like that little burr underneath the saddle pad that one little thing just tips you off. It's a leveler for the emotional state. And there's so many people talking about this now. Dr. Georgia Ede, you may know her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's incredible. And Amber O'Hearn, thank you so much. I love her work. And there's so many people in the realm of psychiatry and psychology that are really looking at this diet as a way to reverse so many mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia. And even Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride has been talking about this same thing for 40 years. She wrote a book called Gut and Psychology Syndrome and works mainly with autistic children. That's kind of her claim to fame, but also adults as well. And she reversed her own son's autism with a carnivore diet, essentially, the GAPS diet protocol. So it's really beneficial for these young children who are lacking nutrients and lacking the amount of proper nutrition to the brain that's causing these things. And we can sometimes slip through the cracks as young children, but when we begin to become adults, things just get harder and harder. So the tools that we have available aren't necessarily readily accessible. So thank you so much for bringing up the names of those doctors. So now you're doing carnivore. So that means no plants. Do you still check your ketones and things like that, or do you not even bother with that anymore?
So I actually didn't have to bother with that anymore. That was one of the things I really liked about making the transition to carnivore is because I still did a lot of tracking of everything during my keto journey. And at a certain point, I didn't feel like it was disordered anymore to the point of orthorexia or anything. But it got cumbersome to, constantly be looking after macros and all of that. And so once I switched to carnivore, it became so easy for me to just auto-regulate and just, okay, well, I know that all of the nutrition I need exists in these foods. So as long as I'm eating what my body actually wants and not eating when my body doesn't want it, then I'll be set to go. And that ended up looking like, now I'm somewhere between 2 or 3 and 4 or 5 pounds of meat per day, given the day, depending on how much activity I did, how much time I have. And that's usually done in either 1 or 2 meals.
How do you eat all that in one meal?
So that was something that I learned a couple of years ago when I was still working, when I was first experimenting with this and still working crazy, ridiculous hours, 16, 19 hours, because like I said, I was nonstop from about 4 a.m. until 10 p.m. most days. And so I didn't have an option to stop and eat or do anything. So by the time I got home, I had done so much and I had already done my own workout as well that I just cooked up. Originally, my meals were like 2 T-bone steaks, which were probably 1.5 to 2 pounds each, or maybe more like 1 to 1.5 pounds each, and then I would have 8 to 12 eggs along with that. And just I was so worn out from my day that I just wouldn't stop eating until I had finished it all. So that was kind of how I guess I got used to eating that much in one sitting. Now I don't do nearly that much because now my days are still long, but they're dictated by me, not by someone else, which was really nice. And so I'll usually have a break somewhere in the day, at least once or sometimes twice in the day, where I can sit down and have just. I still like to eat a good pound or 2 in a sitting, just because that's what fills me up and makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess I got kind of accustomed to that because I deliberately did 1 meal a day because I was experimenting with fasting for a while. Mm-hmm. And so I did that for almost an entire year. And during that year, I also experimented with multi-day fasts and alternate day fasting and stuff like that. So I got used to allowing hunger to build up until I could just satisfy it all at once in one giant meal. So I guess that's how it happened. But after doing that for too long, it did actually, I do think it reduced my metabolism a little bit because I was too strict with just not allowed to have more than a single meal each day for too long. And eventually I was only able to eat, 12 ounces. And then I was so full that I couldn't eat anymore for a while after that. So I need to start going back to eating multiple times, because 12 ounces of meat I'm 5'10" and I weigh 200 pounds. That's not enough to maintain my muscle mass.
It's a good point you bring up. It's a tool to have. It's a good tool to be able to understand the mechanisms and be able to be comfortable with intermittent fasting. I think it's a great practice, but again, I don't know that it's sustainable either, especially for people that are building muscle or a lot of other reasons why it's not sustainable to eat all of your calories in one meal. For me personally, and for many other people I work with, it's just, you can't get enough calories in one meal because you're too full to actually eat enough. And so ultimately what you end up doing is restricting your calories, which is not sustainable long-term for the metabolism. Great that you brought that up. Anybody who's a bodybuilder obviously is very tuned into their physique. And I'm really curious about the changes that you saw and how you manage that now and versus when you were doing keto with your actual muscle growth.
So that was the really cool thing, because that's what I was worried about as well, especially since I had gotten so used to the cheat meals. I still kind of had it in my head that, well, I need some carbohydrate in order to build as much muscle as I can and to do all of this, because I can't just be totally zero carb and only eat red meat. That was where I was very grateful to Brett Lloyd again, where he was like, just try it. Just give it 30 days, and if I'm wrong, then you never have to talk to me again, and of course he was not wrong. As soon as I did it, what I noticed was a couple of things. Incredibly easy for me to stay lean, which was huge in bodybuilding, because so many bodybuilders go through these awful, horrible cycles of, depriving themselves so much that because they're trying to get as lean and shredded as possible. So they dehydrate themselves. They take all kinds of supplements and all kinds of crap to totally ruin their bodies, but they look really great on stage, and then as soon as they're done with that, their bodies are so depleted that they end up ballooning up to an extra 20 pounds on top of that because they're completely devoid of nutrients. And so what I noticed when I changed that was I started looking that way despite not depriving myself whatsoever. Like I've had times where I ate like 4 or 5 pounds of New York steak in a single sitting, and I felt great. I didn't feel bloated. I still had all of my definition the next day. I didn't gain any weight, and it was so easy to maintain and sustain not only my the leanness that I had always been looking for the whole time I was trying to bodybuild, but the definition and the muscle clarity, which is usually a very hard thing to achieve, and took many, many years of me experimenting with different types of workouts and different types of macros and all of that never really seemed to work. And then suddenly I stopped tracking everything, and now all of a sudden it just kind of lands in my lap thanks to Carnivore. And the most impressive thing to me, though, was the endurance, because I thought, my glycogen's get depleted pretty quickly, so I won't be able to. I'll have to do like shorter, more intense workouts, and then just take it easy. I've now done workouts that are 2 hours long. I maxed out every single possible compound lift I could, like 11 or 12 different compound lifts, and not just trying to lift heavy, but actually hitting new maxes, new weights that I had never hit before, and was never strong enough to hit. And I did them all back to back in a matter of a couple hours. And by the time I was done, I felt like I had worked, but I felt like I could have kept going. And the very next day, I was not even sore, and I could have done it all over again.
Wow.
And
That's
I've had
incredible.
multiple experiences like that, which is crazy because before that, even with just keto for a while, I felt good again. But if I tried to max out more than 1 or 2 lifts, I would be on the floor and I would be sore for a couple of days after that, and I'd have to kind of take it easy and recover. But I don't need recovery anymore, or at least I don't need as much recovery. It's much easier for my body to recover now.
And that's such a huge benefit to have less time to recover. I mean, I notice that, and I'm not a bodybuilder, but just the
Right.
little bits of working out that I do, I notice it in a big way. So thanks. So you are no longer tracking your macros at all. Do you check your ketones? I'm curious what you find if you do track with the carnivore diet.
Yeah, so I've thought about checking them again, just out of pure curiosity. I stopped checking them a long time. Pretty much when I switched to carnivore from keto, I stopped bothering to check them, just because when you're only eating 1 or 2 large meals a day, you're going to be fasting most of the time, and you're probably going to be in ketosis most of the time anyway.
Right.
And the one reason I do want to check them though is because I'm curious about the idea that, so many people say that if you're having too much protein throughout the day, then you're going to get a lot of gluconeogenesis, and you could actually kick yourself out of ketosis on a regular basis. But I have a theory that the amount of protein required for that is actually much higher than a lot of people think. A lot of people will say that, if you have more than a total of 100 grams over the day, then you're going to get kicked out of ketosis or this or that. And I don't know. Like I said, I had that day where I had 4 or 5 pounds of New York steak, which was easily 300 and maybe 400 grams of protein. And I always knew when I was kicked out of ketosis. When I was doing keto, it was very clear of like, okay, here comes the depressed mood. Here comes all the other crappy feelings that used to crop back up. And then when I was back in ketosis, it was like, okay, cool. Now I'm back to myself. My brain's working right. And no matter how much meat I seem to eat, and no matter how many grams of protein I seem to have, I never go back to that state anymore. I always just feel like I did when I was in ketosis. So,
wow, that's
I don't know if I have a higher threshold or what. Yeah.
Well, there's a big distinction that could be made. I think this is a theory, but when you're eating a carbohydrate, let's say fruit or rice or whatever the vegetables may be, potato, or let's say a Coca-Cola, God forbid, this sugar is going right into your bloodstream in the form of glucose. I mean, you might as well just stick a needle in your arm and put glucose in your blood. It's pretty immediate. And that's very, very different than your body breaking down protein in your digestive tract and then parsing it out because it has to be broken down into individual amino acids. The effect that has on your blood and your brain is much, much different. And even when you are producing your own glucose through gluconeogenesis, your liver's producing glucose from that protein. That's a whole different physiological pathway as well. So you're not getting that big hit. And then obviously a crash, which is eliminated when you're doing it with protein. So you may have an increase in your blood glucose, but it's happening in a very different way. And it's not giving that big bolt and that big jump in your blood sugar and then that big crash. So those spikes and crashes are going to be eliminated. And that crash is where you really start to feel the functions in the brain diminish, and you start to feel hangry, and you start to feel grumpy and sweaty, and your heart rate goes up, and you just feel awful. And I noticed that, and even with women, that's usually the time when their blood sugar drops real quickly due to the spike, where they'll have hot flashes and other hormonal imbalances that are associated with that peak in the insulin. So that's really great distinction that you brought up. And I think it's really important for people to know that. Well, you look amazing. Are you competing?
So I've never competed in bodybuilding. I realized that when I got to the physique that I had always been trying to achieve previously, I was happy with that. I didn't need a judge to tell me that I was better than some other guy, So I was like, okay, well, I don't need to actually compete in this. This is what I wanted. But I do compete in powerlifting, which I absolutely love, because it's one of the few sports where no one, although that technically you are competing against each other, no one's really competing against each other. Everyone is just trying to beat their own best. And so it's an incredibly supportive environment. Every single person there is super excited when somebody hits a new max or, somebody gets their lift. There's the whole, no matter who's competing, everyone's always happy about it. So I really like that atmosphere. And I mean, it just, squatting, benching, and deadlifting are three of my favorite exercises. And those are the lifts that are done in powerlifting competitions. And there's just, it's a very special feeling to be able to put a whole bunch of weight on your back or over your chest or lifting it off the ground and be able to complete that without having it crush you or topple you over. Originally, I was against powerlifting because I was like, why would you put your body at so much risk by trying to lift as much weight as you can possibly lift? That's just a recipe for injury. But ironically, I used powerlifting to heal a lot of my injuries. And so now I see such a significant purpose in it for physical therapy purposes, because you're building up more bone density, more bone mass. You're teaching your body to brace and engage properly, because that's the biggest thing that I've noticed with myself, and then also treating clients' injuries and stuff over the years, is that the injury most often doesn't really happen in the gym. It happens when you're trying to pick up a piece of paper off the ground, or when you are helping your friend move, or when you turn too quickly to point out the new restaurant that you like to see. It's the most random, stupid things where injury occurs, because we're not thinking and we're not bracing and we're not engaging our bodies in the way that they're supposed to. But when you incorporate something like powerlifting or something very intensive like that, where your body starts to get conditioned to using every single muscle in the way that it should in a functional manner, then all of a sudden your body just naturally does that in everywhere in your life. And so you don't have to worry about helping your friend move or twisting or picking up a piece of paper.
Right. That's interesting. My husband and I just helped some of our friends move, and a couple weeks later, he had extreme back pain. And so he went and got an MRI, and the doctor said, oh, you have 3 bulging discs and you need to have surgery. And I said, well, let's look at some alternatives here. So we're kind of exploring the physical therapy route and building some new muscle and doing some things that are going to hopefully try to resolve that naturally. But of course, the surgeon would say there's nothing you can do. You have to have surgery and all that. So it's really refreshing to hear that you overcame your back pain and your disc problem by actually doing that very thing, by lifting something heavy, but you're doing it in the proper way. So this is probably a testament to why people would consider and should consider getting a personal trainer to help them so that they don't do it wrong, right?
Yeah, and I can't stress enough that you got to be really discerning when it comes to trainers.
Okay.
I've been working in this industry for, I've worked at pretty much every major gym over the years, and I've met a lot of trainers, and you really got to find somebody who's passionate about it and who uses it as a career and not as just a stepping stone to what they really want to do. Because there's a lot of trainers who are just straight out of high school. They got certified online real quick, and oh yeah, I'm in shape, so I know what I'm doing. And they usually don't, unfortunately. Not to disparage anyone. I'm sure that they're wanting to help, but a lot of them just don't bother to dig deep into it and learn about it. And that's the biggest thing that I do, is that almost every minute of spare time that I have, I'm either reading a new physical therapy book, or I'm reading a new book on diet, or, I try to read, 2, 3 or 4 books a month at least. And then listening to audiobooks as well. So it really has to be somebody who's got a passion for it, because those are the people who are going to really care about what your result is.
Right. That's a really good point. So what kind of emotional or mental hurdles did you need to overcome in your own life to be able to accept the reality that you were going to cut out all plants? Did you have any trouble with that, or did you struggle with that at all? Or was it just like, okay, I'm just going to do this?
No, it was a multi-year process.
Yeah.
It took some time. It was because even just when I was first transitioning to keto, I thought of it as, okay, well, this is something that I will do, and I know that it's treating my seizure stuff, so I'll just do it to treat that, and then once that's fixed, I can probably go back to what I was doing before. Luckily, keto was not restrictive for me, really, and so I was able to stick with that pretty easily. But when I first started going to carnivore, it was feeling very restrictive. I liked my veggies, I liked my little keto sweets and my little baked goods that I liked to make with monk fruit or erythritol or whatever it was. And but I never really realized that even with keto, because of those sorts of things, the artificial sweeteners, I never got rid of my food addiction. So I had a really bad addiction to sweets, and I would eat them beyond the point of satiety, to where I was uncomfortable, and it would happen every time. And I couldn't really manage to stop myself from it, even when it was stuff that was quote unquote healthy for me. And so that was kind of my recognizing that after first trying carnivore for a little bit, and then having a keto cheat, and then trying it for a little longer, and starting to recognize that my keto cheats were looking a lot more like my, sugar carb binge cheats that I used to have early on in keto. And I was like, okay, this is too similar. And I started to feel worse when I would have them. Not quite as bad as the carb binges, but I would get some of those same symptoms. And so that's when I said, okay, this is a problem. I think I need to finally acknowledge and accept, because I was never addicted to anything in my life before. So I just didn't think of myself as an addict, but I had to finally acknowledge and accept, okay, well, I'm an addict. I'm an addict to sugar and to sweets. And as an addict, I have to understand that I am not someone who can moderate. I can't just have a little bit and have it be okay. It's never going to be okay. I have to abstain completely.
That's such an important point to make. Dr. Kaiwis, he says, asking a carb addict to count carbs is like asking an alcoholic to count drinks. And I thought that was so profound. And it's so true. You really bump up against the addiction process when you start cutting things out one by one and eliminating them. And it's such a strong motivator for people to binge. And I think on some level, food addiction is rampant, and I see it every day. And it's hard even for me to regulate carbs. And I've been doing it for 25 years. So it's no easy task, but when you completely abstain, it really opens up a doorway for more freedom, I believe, even though it may seem like a very restrictive diet to eat carnivore, only animal meats and protein and fat. It is kind of restrictive, I will admit, but it's also very freeing. So,
yeah, that's the thing that I find it funny now that people tend to describe it that way, because I'm like, I have never felt more freedom in my life. I can eat as much meat as I want. I can eat whatever kind of meat I want. I can eat it whenever I want to. I don't have to force myself to do these multi-day fasts anymore just to make weight or to keep weight or whatever. And I don't have to go out of my way to buy a whole bunch of 15 different ingredients, half of which are going to go bad in the refrigerator before I can even use them. I can just get a whole bunch of meat, throw it in my deep freezer, and eat it when I need it.
That's right.
It's so much food freedom. It's
food freedom. And I don't think people take into consideration the amount of food they waste the amount of vegetables that go bad. I mean, we waste half of what we purchase, most people at the store. And with carnivore, you don't do that. I think it's a saving. It's a money saver to go carnivore. Even though I buy expensive meat, I buy the best meat I can find. It still saves money to eat carnivore. So don't be afraid that you're going to have to spend all sorts of extra money if you change your diet, because it's not true.
Yeah, and that was the biggest selling point for me, was that I thought the same thing. I thought it was going to cost way too much, especially since I eat 2-3 pounds in a sitting a lot of times. I was like, there's no way I can afford that. But when I actually made the switch, and when I realized, oh, well, now I'm not buying these little keto snacks that are $6 for a little bag that I'll eat I'll eat 5 bags in a sitting, and
Right.
And I'm not making those kind of purchases anymore. So my monthly grocery bill dropped by like a couple $100s a month.
Great.
And I still, same thing. Like I'm now finding, originally I was trying to get only things that were on sale. But I'm now finding that I can even splurge. I can get the higher quality meats sometimes, and there's no big deal.
Yeah, that's great. So do you add butter, or do you eating fatty meats like ribeyes with gristle? Like, where do you get your fat? You still probably need quite a bit of fat to be maintaining that amount of muscle mass, right? If you have enough fat, you're never going to actually tap into your muscle stores for glucose, because there's enough fat on board. And most people have some body fat, but if you're a bodybuilder, you have to be really careful, right? Because you don't want to reduce and actually tap into your muscle mass for energy, right? So you want to protect that muscle mass, right? That's and even as an old lady like myself, I'm almost 55 and I'm a grandma, and I'm trying to do everything I can to protect my lean muscle mass. So you have to have enough fat as well. So how much fat are you eating, and where are you getting your fat from?
So I kind of noticed that, because I'm still eating very intuitively. So I noticed that I kind of rotate through cycles where, I'll maybe have one day where I have a lot of, London broil tends to go on sale out here, and it gets down to like $2 or $3 a pound. So I'll try to buy up some of that when I can. Same with tri-tip will get down to like $5 a pound. So London broil and tri-tip tend to be my leaner cuts that I'll go for. And if I'm hungry just for some chewy, lean cuts like that, then I'll have a day where, I'm just eating that and it's mostly protein. But a lot of the time, probably most of the time, ribeyes are a good go-to for me. I love now, I found beef short ribs. That's one of my favorites now. Basically, even just the non-high quality ones still look like Wagyu, because they're so fatty, which is awesome. And then I've actually started going to my local butcher and just asking them for their fat trimmings, which is like $2 a pound. And then I don't know if you've heard of beef crack, but I'll fry them up to render down some of the fat, and then I use that as my cooking oil. So I use the tallow there as my cooking oils now.
Great, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then I'm left over with these little crispy beef fat nuggets, and it sounds weird, but I love to freeze those and then just pour a little salt on them and eat them like ice cream snacks almost. It's
crackers.
Yeah, they're delicious.
That's great. Well, good for you. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I want to honor your time. I know you're busy and looks like you might be at work. Is there anything else that you might want to leave people with? If there's just like a parting statement or some nugget of wisdom that you might want to leave everybody with, what would that be?
I would just say, for anyone who is struggling with quite literally anything, even if you don't think that diet has anything to do with it, if it's, you've been convinced by the medical industry that it's, just something genetic or whatever it is, just try carnivore. Try just, I usually recommend now 60 to 90 days, because that's usually where you start to see more significant changes. 30 days, you'll see changes, but 60 to 90 is like the real breaking point. And I would just say, if you give yourself that goal of 60 to 90 days, I'm just going to try this. see how it works. If it's absolutely miserable, that's fine. Go back to whatever you were doing. But just see how it works. And you never know. Maybe you'll be lucky like me and it will resolve literally every single issue you've ever had in your entire life. And that's just, it's such a blessing that, if this were some miracle pill or miracle drug, it would be trillions of dollars. It would run the entire world because everyone would be taking it because there'd be no reason not to. But because it's a diet, very few people want to do it. And I just say, just try it and prove me wrong. Try it and see that you hate it. And I'll eat my own words. I'll be happy to do that. And I'll personally work with you to help you out if it doesn't work. But I'd be very surprised if you actually commit to it if it doesn't work. That's pretty rare in my experience.
Right. We can argue about what causes all of these diseases, but the interesting thing is if everyone does the same thing, they all reverse. So maybe they all have the same cause, same root cause. It's very fascinating. So thank you for that. And I really appreciate you being on the show today. This has been really amazing. I've learned a ton from you. And maybe one day I'll hit you up again and you can teach me how to build more muscle because I'm trying to do that. So
I'd be more than happy. You're always welcome.
Awesome. And where can people find you?
Doing a couple of things. I'm running my own training and nutrition business. So I'll usually make posts about that on my Instagram through Fellowship of the Nate. Same name on Facebook and on TikTok right now. And then I just started working for this company, which is where I'm at right now, called Lean Dog Fitness. If you want to check it out, leandogfitness.com. Really cool place. We're experimenting with some really super high tech adaptive resistance machines that I'm very excited about. So you can find me through there as well. And I live in Henderson, Nevada. If people were curious. So if you happen to be out here, please do look me up.
I realize that what you've heard here is a radical departure from today's politically correct nutritional guidance. If it were politically correct, it would be endorsed by the media. And if it was endorsed by the media, it would be endorsed by Big Pharma. Let's face it, Big Pharma makes money when you and I stay sick. The real truth is, you can take control of your health with an intelligently designed plan. After helping people get keto adapted for over 25 years, I have found that everyone who succeeds does 3 very specific things. I've included all 3 in my book, How to Start a Keto Diet, and you can download your free copy at radicalhealthmakeover.com.